Today's November the 17th, 2023. This is part 3 with our lovely guest, Annawyn DeBenning Shamas. Okay. Thank you for coming again today. We covered quite a bit yesterday, but we're going to pick up wherever you might want to pick up today. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I am happy to be here again, and I would like to thank you because you have been a wonderful person to guide me through this. I feel indebted to you for the encouragement and the sweetness of your personality. So thank you so much, Tanya, for being here with me as my friend now.
Yes.
I also am very grateful to my daughter-in-law, Annette, who has been talking with you about my doing this particular thing. So she is the one that, really, she was my PR person. And I really appreciated her effort and her being with us, during this project.
Sure.
And she's got lots of things on her calendar, as you do. So
It's my pleasure to be here. So.
Well, thank you so much, and it certainly is mine, of course. Thank you.
Okay.
Mine too.
That was Annette.
Well, I think, that in progressing through my memories and with connection with the theater, particularly in Stillwater and in the university, when I entered it, it was college, Oklahoma A&M College. And I think that we did get into my college experiences, and we talked a lot about Miss Locke. And I have thought about that in the interim, it's just been a few hours, but this is something I want to say again, and I believe that I spoke this way earlier in our conversation. I feel indebted to so many people. I am a very blessed person in that people nurtured me from, my parents, my school, the teachers, all through my life. I have been not separated, but as I said, I'll repeat the word nurtured, and any good that is in me or has been produced in my life and manifested in any way, I owe to that background of support, beginning with my family. And I also have a family now that is tremendously supportive too. I touched briefly, on my husband, but he came, poor fellow, he came to every show that I was ever in. And in some of the roles, I kissed other men, and we never discussed that. So that's something, I guess, that a husband or a boyfriend experiences if he's going with someone or he marries someone who did play ingenues early in her life. So, but I don't want to touch upon my relationship with my husband lightly, because it is one of the most profound things about my life. We were the same age, and we were both born in November. In fact, his birthday is coming up. Today is Annette's birthday, so we'll say happy birthday to her today. And Jimmy's birthday would be the 20th of the month, so he's on my mind, and I want to acknowledge his presence again and appreciate this opportunity to do it.
Didn't you get married in November as well?
We did. Our anniversary is the 22nd.
So it's coming up too. Okay.
That's coming up too. And November's kind of a big month in our family home for the dates that we honor and enjoy, of course. I also yesterday was speaking of, I don't believe that I mentioned the name of James Stratton. James Stratton was he was the author of, he was the arts and science, not arts and science, he was the arts editor of the Stillwater Daily News Press. Now, I think it's, today, I don't think that's the full name of the newspaper, but it's still the same newspaper that was operating here. In fact, the Belatti family, which was engaged in it, they lived on this, just north of us. And their house is no longer there because the hospital in Stillwater has, occupied going south much of the territory there. And so their house isn't there any longer. But anyway, the family, it was the Belatti's enterprise. And James Stratton was a member of Town and Gown. And he reviewed me and everything that I performed, and he was wonderful to me. I had occasion to think about it later in my life. When it was happening when I was young, I thought, oh, this is really nice. I'm so glad that he wrote this about me. But I thought a lot about it and how, speaking of support, this was very supportive to me, and it has been supportive to me in reflection, how that added to my security in performance, because I've been reviewed other ways and not that good. So it's very nice to be able to recall him and realize what he gave me. He gave me really nice press, and I appreciate it now very much and remember him fondly. But he was one of the founding members of the theater company, Town and Gown, that's located here just south of town. And I performed with that group. There were 3 plays that I did with them. One was when I was a senior in high school, and it was the importance of being earnest. I played opposite Sam Okonetsky, who was an art on the art faculty here. And then he moved over to OU and became in charge of their gallery over there. I haven't kept up with him, but I followed, at least I followed that much. And also I had a good friend who played Gwendolyn in that, which were the 2 young women in it who were both of them, very intense, that their beaux be named Ernest, hence the importance of being earnest. So, and that was Betty Taylor, who played the other role. So I have lots of fond memories about Town and Gown. And when I was talking about yesterday, I mentioned that I had directed Gary Busey. Did I do that? Was it on the tape?
Yeah,
do you
just
think?
Briefly, yes.
There was another talented Stillwater person in that, and her name is Sandra Dutroux. And she was a theater student here at Oklahoma A&M. And she played the female lead in that show. And it was wonderful. I'm not going to go through the scenario of it, but nevertheless, it's a wonderful one-act play. But it takes really skilled performers to do it. And so she and Gary were those skilled performances. There was a third actor in it who was also an Oklahoma A&M student who I was very fond of. But anyway.
What was the name of it?
What
was the name of the play?
I was going to say The Importance of Being Earnest, but no. It was called The Private Ear.
Okay. The
Private Ear. It was a 2 plays together, The Private Ear and The Public Eye. Instead of The Private Eye, it was The Public Eye. That second play was an amusing comedy, and I mentioned that if I didn't mention that I directed that, and lo and behold, I directed my psychology instructor, Professor Goldberg. I'm saying his name, I'm sure. I apologize, because he was a wonderful teacher. I really thought he was wonderful when I was in his class and then got to cast him and work with him that way. I mean, just that is what happens here. And the being a Stillwater girl, the opportunities to enact, not necessarily as a right, to intermingle, as when you grow and become a full-grown person with people like your instructors that you sit in awe of, or maybe not so much, but mostly the other. That it's just a wonderful thing to be able to have that experience. But now I guess we will look. One of the things I do want to say again, my talk is all about after the university, after Oklahoma A&M. My focus in theater was community theater, and I was guided that way by Miss Locke. She was the one basically who guided me in that direction. And I do remember that I was talking about my brother who went into the show business aspect of theater, as so many did from Oklahoma A&M and also Oklahoma State. And those people and others who were my peers probably would be able to be more articulate than I in talking about many things connected with the theater. But my path was not Hollywood, and my path was not Broadway. And my path was, once you make the decision, that you marry, that is your path. And so my opportunities to work with theater is based upon, for me, where my husband was sent in his work. And so that my theater pattern and career follows the career of my husband.
Okay.
And I am a community theater person. That is theater that I respect and love, and Miss Locke embedded in me that was as important as any theater aspect, because so many people sometimes, I want to be careful how I phrase this, not every theater has, a community theater is usually headed by someone who does have a theater background. Mm. But sometimes directors do not have. In community theater, sometimes the people, grow through their relationship to producing plays. And that's a valid path as well. But I have my master's degree in theater, and you, Tanya, you have two master's degrees. I want to interview you. What are they? Can you answer that? What are yours in?
Library science and rehabilitation counseling.
Well, my goodness.
Very diverse, yes.
I have a son-in-law who's a psychiatrist. Anyway, I think that's impressive too, to have two master's degrees. Did you?
Both help people just in different ways, so there is that common theme.
There is. Well, I only have one, but now maybe I could go back and think about getting another one, because I think I would like to, and I would have to think about what it would be, but I think it would be theater connected in some way. There was the theater company where I live now at the Denver University is no longer. And I also understand that the theater department in Tulsa, at the Tulsa University, is gone too. I don't understand it. I don't. And so I'm saddened, to learn that. But nevertheless, I feel that I was always taught to feel and led to feel that you serve theater where, if you are a theater educated person, wherever it presents the availability and the opportunity to you, which, as I said, followed the career of my husband. And so when I left Oklahoma A&M. I graduated in 1956, and I graduated with a degree in theater, or speech theater. And 2 years later, I got another diploma. Did I mention this yesterday?
When OSU changed its name, yes.
Okay, well then I don't need to go back over that. But that was, so henceforth I say I'm from Oklahoma State University. We moved first into Independence, Kansas, and I had a newborn baby, and so my daughter Laura, and I was not able to do theater there. There was a junior college there, and there was an accomplished head of theater there. And so I went to her productions, and they were good. And also I believe, I know someone else thought it was another town in Kansas. It was the home of William Inge. But I believe that Independence was the place because we visited his home. I mean, we went to the house that supposedly was his home in Independence, Kansas. And he wrote the play, I guess the most recognizable, Picnic. Mm. And I was trying to think, I couldn't remember who was in it on the Broadway stage, and then he has written so many things that are wonderful theater. One of the movies that comes up often on Turner Classic Movies is Splendor in the Grass. Does that ring a bell with you at all? Mm-hmm. He wrote that. He wrote the play, and I don't even know. I should be careful what I say. If it necessarily was a play, but he wrote the screenplay for it, and it's interesting to me because all of the film stars that were so prominent in my life and that we looked at and admired, people today don't know them. So that's so interesting to me, and the other side is true on my part because some of these new people I don't know either. So, but Independence, Kansas was a lovely place to be, but as I said, my life was narrowly focused on being a new mother and a new wife as well. From Independence, Kansas, we moved to New Jersey, and here I could attach myself. I'm not Independence. Did I say Independence, New Jersey? Woodbury, New Jersey. And there was not a community theater in Woodbury, but in the adjacent town, and I cannot tell you what it was, in New Jersey, there was one. And it was communities were attached and very easily to access. And so I attached myself to this theater, and it was just fun to be around those people again. If I'm talking about something you think that I need to move more quickly through, you just tell me.
You're doing fine.
Okay. I didn't get to participate in productions there because I couldn't. I could not go out every night. And besides, my husband's job took him away during the week that he was in pipeline business. And so I didn't have access to a car. But when he was home, and on the weekends, I was able to do some things with our car, which I did. And as I said, I found this theater company, and it was a lot of fun to be with them. And I did have a job there. I was the editor of their newsletter, and I produced one newsletter before we moved to Toledo, Ohio. Toledo, we were about 18 months in New Jersey and moved on. And I loved New Jersey. I've heard lots of things that are kind of, make fun of New Jersey in some ways. It was a place that I loved the East Coast. We went to the ocean from there. We could access it. It was not a hard drive. But in Toledo, I remember that's really where my theater life as an adult, as a married Mrs. Shamas, mother of Laura Shamas, and my son. He was born, and he was actually with me, of course, in New Jersey. The two of them were with me, and he was just born when we moved first to the New Jersey. So when we got to Toledo, Ohio, he was 2 years old, and she was 4. But I saw in the Toledo Blade that there were going to be auditions at the Toledo Repertory Little Theater. So I didn't tell Jimmy, my husband, that I was going to do this. And I thought, I'll just go and I'll audition. And if I don't get in it, I don't have to say a word about it. And I didn't expect to get in it. As it turned out, I did go, and then I didn't hear from them, at all. So I just assumed that I didn't get in it. In some way, I had some connection with somebody there, and I did, come back in, and they congratulated me and said, you're in one of our plays. And I said, oh, really? That's nice. And it was a wonderful play. It was written by Thornton Wilder. And I'm just going to shorten the title of it. It's called The Happy Journey. And I was cast as the mother. And I was 25 years old. And I had, in this play, I had 2 children, a daughter and a son. The daughter was older, the son was younger. And I was thrilled to do it. I was thrilled to be on a stage again. I was thrilled to be directed in a good play. I mean, wonderful, American playwright, Thornton Wilder, and who is probably most recognized as the author of Our Town. It's information, that probably everybody knows. But anyway, I enjoyed it very much, and we were coupled with another one-act play to be produced there. And we became very friendly with that cast too. So after, I hadn't had this for a long time, the after experience of, talking about things and going to some place where you sit and you have a drink, Coke or whatever, something else maybe. But nevertheless, it was a wonderful, and so I did have to tell my husband, oh, by the way, I'm in a play. And that was the beginning of a very rich theater time for me. That theater company was open to me, and once again, I was again embraced by people. I'm talking figuratively, who helped me and made me feel that I was capable of being on the stage. And I did in that first year. I mean, I'm not embarrassed about it, because it did require time away from the family, but I was in 3 plays. I was, the first one I'm counting as the 3 was The Happy Journey. Oh, the one thing I wanted to say, I was 25 years old, and the boy who played my son refused to think that I was 25. And he thought I was 45. And I was just stunned by it. I said, no, I'm 25. And I showed him my driver's license. He still didn't believe me. But that was a compliment, actually, because I had thoroughly convinced him that I was that person, in the play, who had a child 15 and one 13 instead of 4 and 2. Then the second play that I did there, and I made a number of wonderful friends, was Gigi, and I played the mother in Gigi. She was an opera extra, I'll just say. That was her career, and so I got to sing the bell song from Love Me, and I couldn't anymore do it now, but I actually did it pretty well. I mean, not anything like any opera singer who's any good would sound, but I managed to do it so that it was recognizable. And the third one I was in was Anna Christie, and I played Anna Christie in it, and that's a tough woman. I did think I referenced the play that I was in where I was supposed to be kind of a trampy. I did that yesterday. Well, Anna Christie's had a hard life, and so this is what that I was cast in, and it was a big role. But my work there was another director who was in at some time. She was with this theater group, and she ran she had a professional theater company that operated in the summer, and so she hired me to be in this company and to play in the play, which is a wonderful play, All the Way Home by James Agee. It was first a novel and then became a play. And it happened to be a play that my husband, because we managed somehow, my friend Jody Reed would say, well, we didn't have 2 sous to rub together. Even though we didn't have 2 sous to rub together, we managed to get to New York. I remember when I lived in New Jersey, I mean, we were close enough to drive in, and we did the first Broadway show and I would dream about it when I was, young. I would dream, well, and when I was at Oklahoma A&M particularly, because everybody I'm wrong perhaps to say everybody, but most theater people do think about Broadway as the ultimate place to be, the ultimate goal. And so I was like everybody else, but I had never seen, although I had been to New York, as a pretty savvy 6-year-old in New York City, I had never seen a Broadway show. And the one that I got to see was Once Upon a Mattress, and it starred Carol Burnett. And we just went up there and thought we could get tickets. Well, it was standing room only, so the only way that we saw it was standing in the back, the rail that separates the foyer from the seating area, the auditorium. And it was a wonderful experience. And it turned out that when I moved to Denver and Littleton, Colorado, I don't want to get too far into the future, but I had a theater associate who was a choreographer, and she told me that she had been in that first production of Once Upon a Mattress, and so I had seen her on stage, and that was a fun thing to learn. But as I said, this woman, Barbara Sichel was her name, and she was kind of a controversial figure in a way, but she was also very visionary and produced fine theater. And so I was once again, somebody lifted a hand to me and said, "Come with me." And that's the only way that I have met. It's only because people have said, "Come with me," and put their arm around me and taken me with them on a journey with them, that I have, if I have grown and if I have produced anything of worth or positive, it's because I have been helped all the way through my life. And I am so grateful to that experience. Not everybody has that kind of experience. I know that people do feel that they have been lifted by instructors and parents. And so my life experience is not unique. But I want to emphasize, mine, and that was the way that I developed. And I began with my mother, who she could tell that I had a little bit of propensity toward drama. A little, just a tiny propensity. So we performed. I was with that theater company, and it was a wonderful experience. And it was another in a great play to have great material to to be able to do that, the role of Mary. And I said, we saw Once Upon the Mattress when we lived in New Jersey, and we had also, later I had seen All the Way Home and seen the Broadway production of it, and so I was familiar with it. And it was an honor to be able to do that show. I am very grateful to that director for choosing me, and I don't feel that I adequately expressed that gratitude to her. And she's no longer living, so that's one of the other things, that you need to be able to recognize things when they happen to you and appreciate them, and if you can, convey that to the people who were so thoughtful and supportive of you. I moved from Toledo, Ohio, and it was shortly after the time that I was in that theater company. Actually, the Toledo Repertory Little Theater, and then the Theater in the Park company. We moved to Ponca City, Oklahoma, and my husband was talking to his employers and he said, "Is there any chance I could be moved back to God's country?" And they said, "Well, where is that?" And he said, "Well, Oklahoma." And they said, "Our employees go where we tell them to go." So he changed companies. He got a job with Conoco in Ponca City. And that theater company, as luck would have it, was where my friend Joanne Muchmore, who I had known at Oklahoma A&M, who had come from Stevens. I mentioned that she'd come from Stevens, I believe, yesterday. So she had a fine theater background to begin with before she became a junior at Oklahoma A&M. She had moved to Ponca City, and she had married the editor of the Ponca City News. So she was also one of the founders of the Ponca City Playhouse, was the name of it. So I was immediate, and that was another wonderful company. And the other thing about Miss Locke, because of the adjacency or the closeness to Stillwater, she was able to come see productions there. She came to see my production that I directed. The first production I directed there was Anastasia, and she came over to see it. And she had a criticism of it, and I thought, and it stuck with me. I thought later about what she said to me. It was about costuming. She said that the tuxedos were all different periods, and they were, because we just used them. And that was something that I missed somehow in my theater education. And I thought it's a good thing she didn't see when I directed the Sound of Music in Littleton, because the nuns' headdresses were not all, they were not the same ones, which I knew at the time. At least I knew that, and because of her mentioning that to me. But she was very positive about it otherwise. And the other thing about it was that Joanne, my friend Joanne, who was, did I say that she became a distinguished alum last year? She was recognized as a distinguished alum. The other thing, I did mention it, the other thing I didn't mention was that this was later, it was later when she moved and became artistic director at the Temple Theater, the Temple Civic Theater in Temple, Texas, that she had occasion, she was hired to be Dick Cavett's, an associate producer on the Dick Cavett show. Mm. And that was her, she did that for 2 years before she moved back. She wanted to move back to God's country. She wanted to get back to Oklahoma. So she moved back to Ponca City and was immediately, of course, absorbed into the activities of the Ponca Playhouse. They we performed in the Civic Center on a stage there that I directed 3 shows there, 2 shows, I guess. I directed Anastasia, and then I directed a Thurber Carnival, which by James Thurber, and people don't even recognize his name anymore as being a foremost writer. He wrote for the New Yorker, and he was also a cartoonist. And I'll just quote one of his lines because I think that came out of a Thurber Carnival, and it was this. There was a part of Thurber Carnival was called there was a dance, and the word dance, and it opened the show and it closed it, and so all of the characters who participated in separate skits or little vignettes or that Thurber wrote were in the word dance, and then they became part of the skits. The most famous work that he wrote was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and most people do recognize that. But anyway, one of these, the quote, how can the people would dance and then they would stop and say these one-liners. And then that was the show, that was the opening, and that was the closing as well. And one of the lines was, music, music, music. People are dancing, and having a wonderful time, and we stop and we freeze. And then this woman says, how can I be overdrawn when I have all these checks left? That's the one that I remember. Also, there was a very funny sketch in it, and these 3 people were in it, their man and 2 women, who had decided that poetry needed to be revamped and that they were going to take the old classics and make them more positive. And so the one that I think was the closing line in it was because they took Poe's, the Raven, and they said, the Raven's always saying, no more, just nevermore, nevermore. And they said, let's change that. That's a downer. How about no more war? So that's what they did. That was the punchline to that skit. It was a lot of fun. I've directed that 3 times because I just liked it. And also one of the other plays I directed it for the Ponca Playhouse. They also had plays in the park there. There was a kind of a stage area, and I discovered this play, and I really liked it. It's called Summer Comes to the Diamond O, and it was made into a film. The name Chill Wills probably will not mean much to anybody, but he was a character actor who had a big career in films. He was a kind of funny guy, and so he was in that film. It was a short film, but it's about I don't need to go into the story of it, but I liked it enough to produce it or direct it 3 times. But I also, the Carnival, I managed to keep that in my little bag of plays that I would pull out if somebody needed a little skit or something like that. There's another one in it called Mr. Preble Gets Rid of His Wife, which is hysterical too. He plans to run away with his secretary, and his wife turns the table on him because he's been in the basement digging a place where he's going to do her in and bury her. And she comes down and she notices that the wife doesn't. And so it ends up that he decides that he better be careful because she's prepared to do the same thing to him. But they end up, then that's James Thurber. You see, there are cartoons in the New Yorker that resemble some of his work, but he was a classic humorist and needs to be recognized as such today, I think. But they're from Ponca City. I'm trying to think if I did not do any acting there. The acting that I didn't direct in Toledo. But I was acting and active, and made wonderful friends there, and moved from Ponca City. Jimmy moved on to work with Skelly Oil Company in Tulsa. So once again, I go with him. But I did, while I was working on my master's, between the time that I was in Ponca City and having, still close vicinity to access visits with Vivia Locke. And I did. And I was on the, while in Ponca City, not in Ponca City, I moved, I was in Stillwater that 1 year and lived back in my parents' house at that time, I had 3 children. We had another daughter born to us, Ellen, and we moved, the 3 of us were in Stillwater, and I was on the theater faculty at that time, 1965 to 1966, while I was working on my master's degree. Jimmy had already moved to Tulsa, so at the end of that year, I had many associations with the staff, and Dr. Kimbrough would talk to me. I think I mentioned to you, and you said that you weren't familiar with it, that he asked me about the 3 ladies of Oklahoma State. And of course I knew them. Miss Locke was the major one. The other woman was Marty Sharp. Did I mention this yesterday?
Just briefly, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and that he had mentioned that. So not only was I, there as a student, but then I got to be on the faculty and fraternize with them as a cohort. And that's a nice experience. They were wonderful. And I also remember one of the classes that I taught. I taught earlier in my career as an English associate English, a graduate assistant, because at the time that I ended my college education, there was no master's degree in theater, and so I was taking it in English, and I was focused on Herman Melville, and I'd written the thing that I was writing about was Billy Budd, so I have a little bit of knowledge, and I'm not dangerous with it, about Herman Melville. I also got to go to his house. My son-in-law, John Klein, who's married to my daughter, he's a playwright, as is my daughter, Laura, and this is way into the future. Jimmy and I, he was having a production produced up there it was about Einstein, and it was in a summer theater venue in Massachusetts. So we went up to this area, and Edith Wharton's home was up there. I'll just mention, one of the books she wrote was The Age of Innocence, I think. But Herman Melville had a home up there as well. So my husband was with me, but John was the one that took me on this little kind of scenic tour. And so we were in Herman Melville, my son-in-law, John, and we went into Herman Melville's home, and you've got the feeling on the in one room where they said he wrote in this room, and that he wrote Moby Dick there. You had the feeling you were in a ship. It was just the way the room was shaped, and so I'm sure that had an effect on him. But nevertheless, I've got to get back to the past and my present at that time, which was the move to Tulsa. And I also it was a very rich time for me in the theater. And once again, Miss Locke is, I'm still working on my master's degree, and she is still in my life. She always was. I know that there had to be somebody who was not as fond of her as everybody that I know was. But I don't know who they are, but so to rhapsodize about her is not uncommon. If you have two people who studied with her, you will share stories and memories of her and being with her. Now, it was an energetic and inspiring time. And I was older when we moved to Tulsa. I was still in my 20s, late 20s. And the Tulsa Little Theater was there, very prominent and nationally known little theater company. And I was able to creep my way into it and become active in that theater company. I was able to be elected to the board of directors, and I appeared in plays there. I won't list them, but I did establish a theater, there was one director there. His name was Fritz Congdon, and he was a very fine director. He moved on and became the director of the Omaha Community Theater Company, and he was respected nationally in the theater world. He was in Tulsa. He came to Tulsa just shortly after I had moved there, and the first show that I was in there was directed by him, and then I had appeared in another one directed by the director that came after that, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. In fact, my friend Joanne, that I've mentioned frequently, she was playing The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie in Ponca City at the same time that I was doing it in Tulsa. And this was one of the shows that I did that I was not reviewed so favorably in. However, Joanne, I think, was in Ponca City. But nevertheless, I was able to do something there that I am very proud of, and the board of directors had to approve this. The Oklahoma Community Theater Association was founded at that time, and I'm sorry I cannot give you the year, but it was founded when I was in Tulsa. And there was somebody who lived here. Her name was Jean Adams Ray, and I really am not sure what department or what what college within the university she was connected with. Arts and sciences, I would suppose. But anyway, she was very active in the American Community Theater Association, which was called ACTA. So the competition began. She's the one that brought the competition, the establishment of competition. Well, the whole American Community Theater Company was behind this, of course. And before, in national competitions, they had judges go around from the company to different theaters who were entering shows and said, this is the one we would like to be our competitor in the national competition. However, that changed so that there would be, in each state, there would be the competition. So it was organized on a state level, and the community theaters then brought their productions that they thought were competitive or wished to be competitive to that competition, and it would be at one theater that would be picked, of course. And for the very first one, it was done in Oklahoma City at a theater there that it was a smaller theater, and so I don't know that it exists today. And I can't tell you what the name of it was, but it didn't have a large audience space. And I directed and I proposed it to the board of directors of Tulsa Little. I proposed We Bond in New Haven, which was written by Joseph Heller, and they said, okay, you can. I hadn't directed for them. I just, I had a, things that I could cite for them and my education. But another time when I was supported and helped by people who gave me this opportunity. And so I directed, we bombed in New Haven. And the other thing connected with it, what was so exciting, was that I actually contacted Joseph Heller. There was a song in it called Roll Me Over in the Clover. And I wanted to be able to have that song in it. I didn't know what the tune was or anything. And somehow I was able, we had a phone up at Jimmy's office with Skelly. And so we went up there, and there were several of us doing it so that we wouldn't have to pay. I mean, now we make long distance calls, and we do it just like picking up the phone to call anybody. Back when we were doing this was a big deal. And you thought about how much a phone call was going to cost before you made it. Can we afford to make this phone call? So anyway, we got one that was free to call Joseph Heller on. We had managed to get his number and the okay that we could contact him. So we did. So I talked with him. He was great. He did come when we were living in Tulsa, and the university brought him back in the English department, to be a visiting professor briefly. And I got to see him again. But anyway, I got to talk to him about it, but because it was a show that did not work on Broadway. It was produced, tried out of town. We bombed in New Haven, and it also bombed in New York. But it still, I thought it was a wonderful play. And so in the competition rules, first of all, I want to go back to my discussion with him. I said, we want to do this, and I'm going to have to cut it because it can only be an hour long. And he said, I won't quote him exactly. I'll substitute a word or two. But he said, you can do anything you want to with the darn thing. And then I said, the song, Roll Me Over. And he sang it for me. And so once again, here's somebody who doesn't know me from, Joe Blow out on the street or Jane Blow out on the street, saying, go for it. You've got here. I'm patting you on the back with this.
Can you sing it for us?
I cannot.
Okay.
I cannot. I wish I could. But perhaps it's a blessing that I can. But I was, as I said, he gave us a go ahead. And so I had that win was at my back. And so we did it. We went to that state competition. And we won it. And I'm not going to quote what the judges said, but I can tell you that it was wonderful. And once again, these two men, one of them they were both well-known community theater directors, professional community theater directors. One was from Texas and the other one was from Louisiana. And they were nationally known. And that was the one thing about the Oklahoma Community Theater Company, which I moved to Colorado from Oklahoma, and we in Colorado didn't have the opportunities that were with the community theater organization that the Oklahoma Community Theater provided for us, because we had workshops were brought in by the leadership, and I was just a participant at that time. I later did become president of the Oklahoma Theater Company, Oklahoma Community Theater Organization or Association. It was called OCTA, and once again, there was an opportunity, and I probably didn't do that opportunity justice, but nevertheless, I was the president of it. But and I was also in charge. The presidents are in charge of the conference afterwards, and so I was in charge of the next conference, which was held in Tulsa. But the competition is held, I don't know whether I think it's held every other year. And that production And as it turned out, because Jean Adams Ray was premature in her promoting this competition. She's the one that whipped us up for it, and we did it. And Stillwater competed, and there were 9 productions that competed. The theater was good. And once again, I'm looking at my show, We Bombed in New Haven, and I think, well, this one, they did this in it, and I know the judges would have liked that. And this one, I know that this actor in it was so strong, and that might have carried them, to the win. But We Bombed in New Haven won, and I had a fantastic cast that they trusted me, and that's the most wonderful thing that a cast can give you is we trust you. And so for you to be able to present yourself as one they can trust is an important thing. And I have to say that I look back on my casts and I'm so grateful for their willingness to, going on another journey with me. I'll go with you on this road. We'll do this together. So we bombed in New Haven. As I said, Jean Adams Ray, who was a member of the board of the national organization, had whipped us all up. We did it. And we were the first one in the country because it hadn't been established yet. So since we had gone to such trouble and done it and we had a winner, we were asked to come and perform that show at the national convention in Washington, D.C.
Oh, cool.
And we did. And we went there. One of the things that was mentioned, Fritz Congdon, he came to the Tulsa Little Theater, as a director, and then he moved on to Omaha. But I asked him, because I was talking to him about the fact that I was going to direct this, and he said, you need to, he said he thought that something that would be a little provocative to produce would be appealing to the judges who would be, making a decision about it. And so We Bombed in New Haven is a story. It's an anti-war play, and the gist of it is that war is the ending. I mean, the point of war is meaningless and it's terrible. We just keep repeating over and over. We go to war. We take our young men, and they go to war. And the other thing about competing was Miss Locke was no longer alive, so she couldn't come to see that show. But I was thinking, I'll go make sure that I finish this thought if I can. We really received such recognition for doing that first show, being the first winner, and that's something that's at the top of my credits that I'm proud of, and that it was invited, to be performed at the national competition. But Fritz he went to Omaha, so we were at Tulsa Little Theater, and I was on the board. We were casting about for other directors, and so we had one, and then we had another one that first one, the one that we hired after Fritz did not quite work out. The second fellow, he was a very fine director. His name was Robert Telford, and I was a guest director at the Tulsa Little Theater I directed 1,000 Clowns there, and then I proposed to him because there was another theater company in Tulsa at the time that's still there that was doing more. I've already used the adjective provocative, but more avant-garde work. Still, at the Tulsa Little Theater, we were doing things, classics and popular things, that had been on Broadway, and so I suggested to him, because I was very much aware of this other company, and they were run by a talented group of people, that we have a adjacent theater called the Adventure Theater, in which we would do new works that we would not normally put into our season. Mm-hmm. And so he agreed, so we did that. That was something that I founded and ran for that year. And the two productions that we did, one of them was called The Kid, and it was a Western, but it was, I don't need to go into it, but actually, here's another example, and this is the way theater works. Jody and I, my friend Jody, who lives now in Louisville, Kentucky, that I met and became a lifelong friend in Tulsa. We went to another theater conference. What I started to say, and I just remember that the Oklahoma Theater Company provided workshops that were so wonderful. They brought in celebrities, knowledgeable people, and we got to listen to them and learn and grow. And that's one of the things that I miss a lot. I haven't had the chance. I did take a course in theater, a very short little course on Shakespeare at the University of Denver. And I also, while I was in Tulsa, took another Shakespeare course and loved it. And so I kept myself, going that way. But I'm remarking about the difference in what the Oklahoma Community Theater Association brought in to educate, and the Colorado Community Theater Association does too, but they some way are not able to finance the bringing in of a major name, although they occasionally did, but it was to go to one of those conferences was an experience, an educative experience. So something connected with OCTA was going. Jody and I went to Oklahoma University for it. It was there, and I'm sorry I cannot come up with this playwright's name, but he was a new playwright, relatively new, but he'd had some shows on off Broadway, I believe, and one of his plays, the title of it is The Rope, and it's about drugs, the use of drugs. So I asked him, because we were coming up on another time when we were going to have a theater competition, because I wanted to direct it from Tulsa, from the Tulsa Little Theater, and they had given me the permission since I had directed We Bombed in New Haven. They felt safe in letting me do another one. So I asked him, I said, just as I used Fritz as a source to say, what should I be looking for if I'm choosing, something for this? And he told me about this play, and it's called The Kid, and it's a short play, and it's a Western. And I used that in the Adventure Theater, and also with our entry into the competition the year that we produced it. And it didn't win. It came in second place. The first place winner was Ponca City Theater, directed by my friend Joanne. And she also wrote the version of it, because it was the play about the championship season, play that deals with basketball, and so I believe it's an all-male cast, and it was strong, and it won. But ours was strong too. There were 3 judges for this. 2 of them voted for that championship season, and the woman on it told me she voted for our show. She thought that it was the strongest because it was not a standard show. It was a new thing. It was new theater, and probably isn't done very much. But so we did have, that one, as I said, and it didn't come into the top place. But of course, as I was always hopeful, but when I see something that's chosen, okay, I saw it. I saw the good in it. I understand it. So, and besides that, when you have a good friend involved in it, you're supportive of that as well. But when we had to move from Tulsa, which I always said, if you had to move from Tulsa, I guess Colorado's a nice place to move to. And of course it is. It's wonderful. We did our family vacations at a town called Creed, and because my family, my mother and father were educators, there was a ranch in Creed that was run by a woman that the principal and the superintendent of public schools were friends with, and so my parents were friends with them, Reed Russell and Joe Timpkin. Joe Timpkin was the principal of Stillwater High School when I was in school there, in the high school. And Dr. Reed was the principal, he was the superintendent of public schools. So we went to Creed. And that, to talk about that, well, it's still my favorite place in Colorado. And there are many places in Colorado that can be favorite places. But I love that place, and I've been back to it, and there is a theater there that operates. Yeah, and I knew that it was, even as a youngster, and even as going back there when I was an Oklahoma A&M student, that this was an ideal location. And that's the way I look at towns when I go into it. If a small town, because in a huge city, you've already got the theater there. I mean, it's just, there's no question about it that it will be there. One of the things that I did not mention, and I'm going to go back and, well, it's still in the Tulsa experience, it's connected with my Native American heritage. And I directed for the American Indian Theater Company, and that too was a wonderful experience. I want to watch the time because I have couple of more things that I want to make sure that I get into this time frame, and I know that you'll let me, Tanya.
I will. I sure will. Yes.
Oh, and my patient little daughter-in-law, she has to, suffer through this many times hearing these stories. But anyway, now I'm trying to think, where was I before?
Native American background.
Oh, yes. I was asked to direct the show for this theater company. And while I was there, still connected with in Tulsa, connected with the Tulsa Little Theater, we did a production of Indians that Bob Telford directed, and it won the state competition to go to the national competition. I've been talking about these things. They played big. They have in my life, and in Colorado too, as well. But so I was. It won first place, but it had to be cut. I mean, to compete, it had to be an hour. Mm. You were allowed 10 minutes to get your setup, and it was timed. And it was people were placed in squares. I mean, companies were put in squares with timers there. They started the time. That was 10 minutes. You had to get this setup, and if you went beyond your time, you were disqualified. You had to be 10-minute setup, 10-minute strike, and the show in 1 hour. You keep me on track because I'm going to go back to We Bombed in New Haven. I solved that problem with the 10-minute setup by having the play start the minute they said their lines, and then the actors set up the set. So while they were talking and going on the play and putting up flats, the play was going on with their lines. And I really am looking back on that, and I'm thinking about the next play I direct, I'm going to do it that way. I don't know when that will be. At 89 years old, I'm not sure what that. I'm sure I'm going to have an opportunity, though, if I really, want to do it. Mm-hmm. But Indians was a fine production, and in this production was I'm trying to think what his tribe was. I don't think he was Pawnee, but he may have been. And I'm embarrassed to say that I can't be accurate. I shouldn't say a tribe name connected with, not actually being accurate. But his name is Brummett Echohawk. And just recently, I think this fall, there was a reflection, or the word for a retrospect of his artwork, and it was brought here to Oklahoma State, and it was produced by the art department. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I could have timed a visit to see it. He's no longer living, but he was cast in it. He was cast in Indians, and Indians, when the thing connected with the Oklahoma with the community theater organization, that provides for you an opportunity for international competition. Even if you go there and do not come in first, second, or third, there are people there that come and who represent theaters in Europe and say they would like you to bring this production. They will finance it. They will not provide your travel for it, but they will provide things for you. And with Indians, there was somebody at the national competition from the Ealing Theater in Ealing, England, who saw it and wanted to bring it. Well, to participate at this particular one in Ealing, it had to be a full-length production. Mm-hmm. So I was asked, we only had the 30-minute show, so the director, Robert Telford, asked me to direct a show to accompany it. And this was my show that I mentioned and cite as my first international theater experience. I directed a piece from America, Hurrah. So we performed ahead. Indians was the main play. But our play, the play that I directed, was chosen, and Bob, I'm grateful to him for having given that to me. There's another gift to me. And I don't want to get too sappy. I've already been sappy enough. But it was a wonderful experience. We did go over there, and I remember when you had the opportunity to rehearse it on the set, so that you had familiarity with it. We didn't have anybody to do the lights. Well, guess who did the lights? Jimmy Shamas, my husband. Wow. He went up. He was in the light booth. He was able to he was creative. My husband was. He had a very artistic nature, and so he was able to do some things that I was really surprised about it. But I had confidence in him. So when we were rehearsing this show on the stage, the French director was there. I don't speak any French, and he knew that I had directed it. And he kept saying to me, he said, "The maison scene, like that to me." I'm not pronouncing it correctly, I'm sure, but that is the word for direction, or that is what is used to talk about direction. That phrase, or maison scene, in the French language. So he was complimenting me, and of course I knew he was, but I didn't know what he was saying. But it was awfully nice to have him say that to me. Once again, that guy, he wouldn't know me, and I ran into him and knocked him down. but which I would apologize profusely for. But once again, does people that you don't know who have enjoyed, but that is the whole point of doing something. You're putting something out. I've worked on this. You're saying, I've worked on this. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's worthwhile for people to see. And you're hoping that it will have that effect on the people who come. And so it was very nice to hear that from him, as it is when other people, would compliment people as they do for performances. And one of the things that Miss Locke said was that she put it kind of like this too: how dare people come and criticize our shows? They need to know how far we have come. And that's the way that I feel too. If you had seen us at the beginning. So that is, her phrases, I'm sure others have, ones that they could recall that she said and have, share those, but that was something.
But yet she criticized you for your costumes.
Oh, yes, she did. She did. One of the things that, I've been talking about, I talk about how the support that I have always received, which I have, and I am so keenly aware of it. And I try to be generous in my appraisals of theater when I go. I always, because I have a background and I know a little bit about it, and so I'm aware when I see something that, I'm not talking about mistakes that happen, because always that's a given. You'll see something will fall, or, an actor may not give his lines correctly, and you may be aware of that. But it's well. Anyway, I was at Oklahoma A&M. You had to participate in all aspects of theater and to learn it. Mm. So, I talked a lot about what I did as an actress, and Miss Locke's directing and how that affected, and her teaching style. But I remember, so I'm not going to have give the name of this man. He's moved on to another university, and I don't know where he is now. But I was the stage manager for The Mad Woman of Chaillot, which was directed by Miss Locke. I had friends that were in it, and I had a small walk. I was the stage manager, but I had a walk-on part, just very small at the close to the end. So, and I was in costume. But so there was a meeting immediately afterward. The technical guy that was what the meeting was about. And of course I was the stage manager. Well, I was in costume. It was a long dress. And so I went off stage to take it off and then come in my jeans, my stage manager attire. He reamed me out. He, in front of the cast, how dare, I don't need to go on about it, but I was so taken, and I said, I was trying to get out here. I was trying to get out of, it didn't matter. And the other thing I want to tell you, just remembered it now. When I was in Romeo and Juliet, there was a party that my husband's fraternity gave. It was the big party of the year. And I couldn't go to it I wanted to go to it because there was a rehearsal for Romeo and Juliet. And I went to Olive Hillis, who was directing, and said, this party, I really want to go. And it's the important party at his fraternity. You can't, Annawyn. You have to be at that rehearsal. So that's the way I feel about rehearsals. I feel that once you've taken that, I mean, I'm, at the time I didn't run around saying bad things about her. I loved her, and I understood. And people nowadays, often they're more cavalier about missing rehearsals. But I imagine in universities, they're still pretty, they expect you to do that once you take on that obligation. But back to the Native American Company and working with Brummett Echohawk. He was an artist, and he was also a very fine actor. And he played the leading role in this play that they were producing, this company, theater company. And the name of the play was 49. And 49 is a dance, a Native American dance. The playwright's name was Hene Yigama. Hene Yigama is now on the UCLA theater staff. And he came, here's another opportunity that's given to me, that theater company in choosing me, because my blood quantum is not a huge, as the Chickasaw, and maybe it's not correct even to refer to it. So pretend I didn't say that. But I was fair and not Native American appearing particularly. And they, once again, gave me this, and I don't remember how my name, I don't know who presented it or how it happened, but I was able to do this show. Hene Yigama, who was an Oklahoma playwright, he was with us. He came to Tulsa and was with me while this was produced. He had worked and was recognized by a theater company in New York that's quite famous. I don't know if people are as familiar with it now. In fact, I suspect they are not, as we were at the time when we were doing this play. But I knew about it before Hene Yigama. It was called Cafe La Mama, or La Mama Theater. And it was headed by Ellen Stewart. And he was a protege of hers. And he got her to come and see the production. And she had, she's a Broadway person, and she, once again, she was truthful about some things in it that that were old hat to her. De trop, as Miss Locke would say. That was a phrase that she used to like. That's de trop. Old hat. I believe that's the meaning of that statement. She was fluent in French, Miss Locke was. I bet she used that as a whack in France when she was a whack. 3 years in the armed forces. Yeah. How about that for a drama instructor? But Brummett became a friend, and there's a book about him. It's called Brummett, and I wish that I had known some of the things that were in that book at the time that I was with him. I was presented, he gave me, I got 2 shawls that were given to me that were made for me. One of them was a gift from the company. I didn't expect anything at all. And the one from the company, I wore this shawl to the Native American Voices in Los Angeles, a very famous Native American theater. It's also connected to the Autry Museum. Gene Autry was an Oklahoman. Gene Autry operated out of Bristow, Oklahoma, on the radio there. Are you familiar with Gene Autry's name? Mm-hmm. A lot of people, it means, doesn't mean anything to them, but nevertheless, he is, made a fortune, and in his performances in film and as a singer. And he founded this. It was called the Autry, the museum, and it's a Western themed museum, and also this famous theater company became attached to it, the Native Voices. So I was there. There was they have a competition too in writing of 10-minute shows. And my older daughter won it one year, and my younger daughter entered about 3 years ago. And it's like honors that are given out in large company groups, like as an Oscar winner among 5 candidates or 10 candidates will say, it's just an honor to be in this group, be nominated with these people. Mm-hmm. That's the way that we feel about to be chosen. Just talking about that competition that's 10 minutes long, to be chosen to participate, that your play is chosen. My younger daughter has entered another one that's based upon a true experience of I told it yesterday, I believe, about my grandfather who went around the room, gave some white people a word that is not supposed to be said in polite society, and had them greet the Native Americans. But she has entered this competition, and she hasn't used that story in her story. But there's another story that I will tell here, because it was a story that came down to me, and it deals with Native Americans, and it's back into the past again. So keep me on track, because I want to go back to where I was to the Native American company. Okay. But I was looking through the history book, History Quarterly, that comes out quarterly for the Chickasaw Nation. And one of them, I opened the page, and it was about these students who had been chosen to matriculate at Vanderbilt. Well, in this group of 9 people, 9 young men, chosen by the Chickasaw legislature or some other Chickasaw body, out of these 9 men, 2 of them were relatives of mine. And one of them was my Uncle George, who graduated from Vanderbilt and was an attorney in Ada. And the other one was a brother, whom I really was not familiar with. But my grandfather also attended Vanderbilt. He did not graduate from there, but he did. And the story, I won't go into that story, but my daughter has taken an oral history that was given to me, which I have shared with the whole family, and made it into a 10-minute little play. And so she's entered that in this competition. Okay, now where am I? I'm going back to
the Native American Company.
The Native American Company. And it was not only, did they select me to do that, to be, once again, the camaraderie with the cast. It's always something that I've enjoyed as a director, as an actress, or an actor, I believe we prefer. It's genderless now. But it was wonderful. That experience was wonderful, to be with that cast. And the experience, with Brummett Echohawk, who played Sitting Bull in the company of Indians that we took to England and performed. And he wrote, he as an artist and as an actor, he wrote this wonderful thing that was in the Tulsa World magazine about that experience, because the English they know about Indians, and I were referring to them now, of course, as Native Americans, because Columbus was, slightly in error, thinking he'd landed in India. But there, in some writings that done by Native Americans, they don't write out. I'm sure maybe you're familiar with this. They don't write out the name Indian. They use N-D-N, and so when you see that, that's Indian. You say Indian, but it's not the Indian that you would say was East Indian, as one of the presidential candidates. What's his name? Something Swami. I don't mean to be irreverent about that. Please, I apologize if I can't remember.
What year was this? I'm just curious. Where are we chronologically when you went to London?
And I'd have to think about it. I think it's
Tulsa,
I think it's
right?
the early 70s.
You were still in. So obviously, you were still in Tulsa.
I'm still in Tulsa. Yes, I've gone back. From where I was.
Right. But in your career within Tulsa Little Theater, which is now Theater Tulsa, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Where was that? That was sort of in the middle, or the begin? That was sort of in the.
It would be in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be in the middle.
Okay.
To be able, to do that show, and it was a really strong production. The production of Indians, directed by Robert Telford. When we took that to competition, that it did not win first place. It came in third. There was another show that came in first place, and the name of it was Gnädiges Fräulein, which the Tulsa Theater Company, which is the theater from Tulsa University, did it one summer, and I was in that. I had a role in that. I played it's a pitiful role. I mean, actually, it is. She's a pitiful person. And I wanted to play that role. She didn't have any lines. She came out at the beginning and the end, and she sang a song that she would sing, so full of, sang all alone. I'm so all alone. There's no one here but me. And she would sing it, but I was singing it at an upbeat tempo. It was all alone. I'm just waiting for a ding-a-ling. Just somebody call me. And that was all that character did. But nevertheless, it was done. It was a beautiful production. It only had 2 people in it. And I have always felt like the community theater means, and I do still feel this way, that people will disagree with me, and I always think that smaller casts aren't representative of, a bigger community. I always would root for in the production of a show. But that year, that was the best show. It was a wonderful show. It was so good. It was written by Tennessee Williams, and the 2 women that played in it were brilliant. And there was another one that came in second place, and with Indians, and ours was strong. We had Brummett Echohawk playing Sitting Bull. We came in third, but we were the first choice of this man who came from Ealing, England, because of the nature of the material. So when we went to Windsor Castle as a group, the theater provided us with many wonderful experiences. They provided us with our housing, and they provided us with they didn't provide the payment for us to get there. We had to raise that, which my husband was head of raising the funds for us to go to to England, and he did it. I was amazed at that too. He just continued to surprise me, and I had known him a long time. But we took I can't remember how it happened, but we were taken down the road to Windsor. I mean, this was a pathway, but we were somehow in some kind of open air vehicle. And the children along the way, I mean, because they could see, we had several Native Americans in it. Brummett, of course, was the big one. But when I say that I wish I had read his book, because I learned a lot about him, and I learned about his war. He was a veteran, and my friend Jody Reed would talk about him. She said, because on Veterans Day, he always headed the parade, and her memory of him was, in his uniform. It's emotional for me to describe it because he would be in his uniform and he would be walking, just with straight and wonderful posture down the street as a proud American veteran. And Native Americans, when they were in the service, weren't always, the same is true of Black community and service. I mean, it's taken us years to come around to acknowledging those contributions, and but there were some interesting stories that he told in that I won't share, but they were. I'll tell you after the. You'll find it interesting. But now, I just wanted to bring him up because of that he was another person, and I was talking about the shawls. I back to that now. I was talking about the shawls. He had his wife make me one, and I did not. I did not fully appreciate it. I've gotten, because I've mentioned the company, the Native Voices, the company that in Los Angeles, because the other shawl that was given to me by the company, which was made for me, I had it there and I was wearing it. And this one young woman came up. She said, "That is the most beautiful shawl." She said she could tell by just looking at it, the workmanship that had gone into it. And it was I'm wearing this is something that is not authentic, and and I actually got it at a church auction and paid $10 for it. I mean, but this shawl, I didn't bring any of them with me. I wasn't going to do that. But one of the things that she pointed out to me, which I was ignorant of, was she said, "Look at this fringe." It wasn't fringe just that, came down like this on it. It was intricately attached, woven together, and, it was something that took time and care to do. I didn't know that. And then I got out the shawl that Brummett had his wife make for me. They met in an art school in Oklahoma. The two of them were both artists. His wife, she was a beautiful woman. And I saw she had done the fringe on that the same way. And so I'm able to, now I could look, but this young woman, she had to come up and look at it. And she said, I knew immediately. And it's also the material. And I knew I had a wonderful shawl. But after going to the Native American Theater Company and having this young woman point these things out to me, I was educated again. And that's another thing. I'm counting all of these things, just mentioning, if it hadn't been for that person, I would not have known what wonderful. I knew they were wonderful because they were meaningful to me because of who gave them to me. Mm-hmm. But I was no way educated about the process. And knowing that makes them even more precious to me. And Brummett is no longer living. I did call him one time just to talk to him. But he was my younger daughter was about 9 or 10 years old at the time. And she played a Native American child in it. And he was very nice to her. And he told her, he said, "This is when we want a crowd noise." He said, "Well, all you do is you say rhubarb, 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 rhubarb." And he gave her something, I can't remember what it was, but I think that I want to move on now to, I've talked a little bit about Littleton, where I live now, Littleton, Colorado. And there was a theater, our time is winding down, but there was no theater company in Littleton. Now we're living, could be considered part of Denver because it's so attached. It wasn't, when it was founded, it was not, of course, it was the distance between Denver and Littleton, but no longer. So I would, if I wanted to, I had access to the other theater companies that if I wanted to participate. And I did. There was my daughter Laura, the playwright. There was a company in Denver, and it was called The Changing Scene, and they did new works. That's all they did, new playwrights. And so she had worked on there. They no longer had this at the Denver Center Theater Company, but they had a new playwrights unit that she was part of, and they don't have it anymore, and I'm not sure how long they had it after she was in it, but she had a production a new one called Rune Hill, which was based on a Native American theme that was produced there, and so and that's another thing that was brought into our family, that there was support because she's part, your children's experiences, and everybody does, they become yours because you're impacted by their participation and how it affects them. And so I look at any opportunity that was given any of my children, it was one. I don't mean to say that I usurp it. I honor it as their experience, but it's meaningful to me. And that's the way it is, to be a parent. It's just the way it is. And there's nothing unique about it or maybe even admirable. It's just the way we're built. And, but...
So what time did you move to Littleton?
In 1980.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about that, because I've mentioned my good friend Jody, we separated paths per locales. We've been friends for years and still are, and have seen each other. We do that. But she moved away at that time when I did. So we were both active in the Tulsa Little Theater and with other theater companies too. We interacted and with them and enjoyed it. But the Tulsa Little Theater was our company, but she then became quite active. I mean, she became a celebrity in the town that she lived in called Highlands in North Carolina. When she would walk down the street, people, oh, I saw you in Steel Magnolias, whatever. And that's kind of fun to have that happen to you. But I don't feel like I've talked enough about mentioned my brother.
But before you get that, you were telling us about starting the theater in Littleton.
I know.
Was that
okay,
where you were going?
So
but which way? But you were going to get back to one or the other.
I'll do Littleton, but I do want to say a little bit more about him.
Whichever one you want to do first.
Okay, well, I'll go back to Littleton. I made the decision, and we are governed, by our choices. We answer to them for whatever happens from them. And I decided that I really didn't want to drive 10 miles or 15 miles, or actually, you think of it more in drive time than you do in miles. It takes you this long to get to where you want to go. So I was not sure that I wanted to have a 30, 45-minute drive. And I worried about winter weather, and the weather there, we do have snow. I mean, it's certainly mild considering the east, where when you have snow, it maybe stays, for forever. Not forever, but it doesn't melt as quickly because of the dry Colorado air. Mm-hmm. But that concerned me about the driving as well. So there was a building in downtown Littleton that was there was a town hall, and it was a place for production. There had been things produced there in the past that were theatrical, and I really thought that would be a wonderful place. And so we organized we found Kindred Spirits, which another thing where we had a theater that I participated in was within my church, and our minister had been he had played Elwood P. Dowd in Harvey about the rabbit, the magic rabbit. And he was very happy as that performer. He'd done it in I think in the Grand Junction, Colorado area. And he was interested in producing it at our church, and he would be Elwood P. Dowd. And so they were casting about for a director, and I was one that was given that opportunity again. And so that was actually the first thing that I directed in Littleton, was that production at the church. And since then, the church has been a place for me to do theater in connection with the art series with our church and other things that have happened there. And we did form a theater company, but there were people involved in that who also were interested in a community theater that would involve other people. That was totally just our church members who were participated in that. So from that point, I'd say maybe there were about 10 of us maybe. And so we banded together, and I did not found it. I was one of the founders. It's not a mistake to say that I was the one with the theater education, because that's true. And I'm proud of that I have that education. But the other people were tremendously talented people in many ways. We had, I don't need to go on about the membership of it, but I tried to back away from major. I wanted them to choose the name of it. Mm-hmm. I would have been happy if it had been called the Littleton Community Theater, because it attaches it, you know exactly what it is. But since this facility, the town hall in Littleton, was on Main Street, the name was chosen the Main Street Players, which that was what the company was named. And we existed for 25 years. And we produced, for the most part, we produced good theater. But it's hard. When you have a theater company like ours, and you're in a metropolitan area, there are many theater companies. So you in Stillwater, there's only one community theater. Mm-hmm. Although there may be more. There may be other groups, but I don't know of them. So if I've offended anybody who's listening, if you have a theater company in Stillwater and I didn't mention your name, I'm sorry. But Town and Gown is the one that exists, and the one that I reference and participate in and directed show. And I would love to direct there again at some time. I don't think that's I don't know how they choose them. They might not pick me. But
well, is it all volunteer, or do you get paid a little bit when you're direct?
Well, I am paid when I direct, but I was not paid for. I did not charge for the Main Street Players. We established a policy to pay people, but I always refuse that. But I'm paid to direct when I directed for Theater Tulsa, and my friend Joanne was head of the Temple Civic Theater, and I directed. She hired me to direct 2 shows, so I directed. I went to Temple, and I stayed at her home for 6 weeks when I was directing the shows, and I directed 2 strong scripts. I've given for usually people honor me in thinking that I can deal effectively with something that's pretty good, not heavy always, but the first play that I did there was I Never Sang for My Father, and I think it's Robert Anderson who wrote it. I would have to check it out. There is something I want to say about, because I talked briefly about it yesterday, and I I checked and I came up with the name of this person, so I want to mention it. I think that it was in yesterday's conversation. It may have been afterwards when we talked a little bit, I'm not sure. But anyway, where now I'm scattering around all today, aren't I?
That thought, I don't know where
You don't know either.
For 25 years in Littleton, that's a long time.
Well,
though,
it is,
to have
and the
a-
theater company, we competed in the Colorado
Yeah,
community.
I was hoping you'd get to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go there now because I've had 3 shows that have had international performances, and I'm proud of that. The first one was the one that Bob Telford asked me to do in accompanying Indians over to England, and with that company. I tried to use some of the people who were Indians in that production, and I also tried to use the people who were part of the crew in it, and because I thought it would be nice as the wife of one of the one of the people who was involved in the set, I used her in the show, so that those people could go with us on that trip. Then the next one that I had to go, well, we did a production, Quilters. Have you ever heard of Quilters? It's a wonderful show. It's specifically appealing to quilters, and it was done the original production of it was done at the Denver Center Theater Company, and it was a powerful show. It was a good show, and it was done by the professional company, and it was chosen to put in our season. I directed it for our season. It had to be so we did it, and it was a big success. It draws a huge crowd of women who, if they aren't quilters themselves, they're admirers, or they grew up with quilters. But nevertheless, my daughter, have you made a quilt? Either of you?
I have.
So you know what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm mentioning my daughter, Ellen, she's made 2 quilts for her 2 daughters that are from T-shirts, the accumulation of T-shirts, and she had seen one, and I'm sure you've seen them too. Mm-hmm. So she gave these quilts to her daughters last year for Christmas, and I know they'll appreciate them more when they get older. They're 24 and 27 right now, 28, and but they were grateful for them. I don't mean to imply they weren't, but it was a big success. This was one time when we got really strong reviews, and the president of the company then told me that he thought that it would be a great entry, to the Colorado Community Theater Competition, and to try to shorten it, we entered in, and we did win. We won first place. So we were invited. At first, when these competitions began, the piece de resistance was to go to Monaco. That changed over the years. There were other places, other theater venues that came up for international performance that people liked equally or maybe preferred. Theater Tulsa went to another one that was prior to the Indians one, directed by Robert Telford, or maybe it followed it. I think maybe it followed it, and it was one I called The Baptizing, and it was a script that Bob Telford knew. But anyway, it was quilters. We had to cut it. You have to get permission. You can't just, randomly say, "Oh, I like this play. I'm going to cut it." Just like, when I talked about We Bond in New Haven, I couldn't do anything like that unless I had the publishers okay, or the authors okay. And we had to get those, that approval for doing the cutting of quilters. And I had a very dear friend, the one that I mentioned that I had seen on stage in Once Upon a Mattress, seeing my first stage production. She was a choreographer for quilters. And she also, because that was such a contribution, I felt thereafter that she should be recognized as co-director. So that show, I was the original director, but after that, we were co-directors on it. Her name was Jane Borg Chilson, and she's no longer living. And her being gone is a loss to everybody. But we were invited to go and produce that at Monaco. The reason I mentioned the Tulsa production of the baptizing is because they were invited to perform in Monaco. I wasn't living here then, but I was aware of this. Oh, I was, but it was a time when we were kind of in flux. And but it I don't know. I think it went to Monaco, and was performed in the Princess Grace Theater. And Grace Kelly is the one that established this. And so anytime we would think about competition, we hope we get to go to Monaco, and that really was the high point at one time. But if I've said it, there were others that were equally prestigious. But we were invited to go there. And since I knew the Tulsa Little Theater history, it meant that to me. And we did not place in the national competition because there are reasons for it, but we did it. It was a strong show. I mean, we were proud of it. But I felt that we got the best international place to go. And so that was the second show that I touched that had a international performance, and it was done in Monaco on the Princess Grace Theater. The other show that I directed was a show called Lovers, and it was written by Brian Friel, an Irish playwright that I admire and really appreciate. I'm very fond of Brian Friel. I was a guest director. One of the shows I directed at Theater Tulsa as a guest director was Philadelphia Here, or Tulsa Little Theater, was Philadelphia Here I Come. And I also included it when I was talking about the Adventure series. We did the kid that we entered in the competition that we came in second place. We did the kid as one of the productions. And the second show we did was a play by Brian Friel, Lovers. And it was a combination of two one-acts together. And one of them was called Winners and one of them called Losers. We did not produce that at my theater company. We didn't put it into our season, but I selected the show Winners from that and once again, the board has to make a decision. The board of a theater company has to make a decision about, well, if we enter, what will we do? And this one, we did win with the show by Brian Friel, even though it was not in our regular season. We produced it separately. It was entered in the community theater competition, and we didn't win the state competition, but we came in third place. And the first and second places could not manage to go to the regional competition, and so it fell to us, the third place, to go to the regional competition, which was in Utah, and I can't think of the name, but it was the home of, I think, Brigham Young, but nevertheless, it was in the city, and I can't give you the name.
I'm thinking of Provo, but is that
It
right?
was Provo. What university is there? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't know.
Put me on the spot.
But it was, and so that was a regional. I don't know that I'm being accurate about this, but somebody had to come and say, they had to see there had to be approval from us from some unit connected with the state organization, since we were third, for them to come, and we did a production for them to see if it was okay for us to go on to the regional. So we went on. We were the regional representative for our community, for our district, which I think it included Colorado, New Mexico, and two other states, and I don't want to mention them because I'm not sure about which it could have been Idaho included. It was the Rocky Mountain region or something like that we were in Colorado. So we were chosen to go to the regional, and we won the regional with with Lovers. The third place winner comes in number one. But we did not place at the national competition. But once again, we were given a wonderful venue to go to this because there were two young people who were the cast members in it. This man represented an army base in Germany, and there's a huge community theater that he supervises, and this was all news to me. I mean, an educational process comes with this. I mean, that's, it's a cliche to say travel expands you, but I'm telling you, it has expanded me a heck of a lot, physically and mentally. There's a lot of good food. Anyway, we were. It was this army base was near Heidelberg, but we were chosen because there were a lot of young people, infected at this army base, and it was in Germany, and so that was an honor that he chose us because of the youth represented in our play, and we had a wonderful couple, and it was a strong production.
And what year was that?
It was 1996.
Okay.
I think. So it was a wonderful experience, and it was after that. Well, I don't need to take that now. I'm going back. I'm going to go, I guess, and that was from Littleton. So I had two shows from the Main Street Players, the Littleton Theater Company that I was involved in the founding of. When I was working for the American Indian Theater Company, we initiated a theater company there for children called the Tribal Youth Theater, for which I wrote a play, and there was another young man who was a very accomplished artist, and his last name was McMurtry, and I think it was Robbie McMurtry, but that may be incorrect. But nevertheless, he was a very gifted writer as well as cartoonist. And so we both wrote things for the children, for the young people in the Tribal Youth Theater to work. My daughter, Ellen, my younger daughter, submitted what I wrote. It was based upon a Nez Perce legend, and the legend is, I found it I researched what to write for this youth theater, and it was done the same year that I did the same year that we did the play 49 for American Indian Theater Company. It was that same time period to do, and it was in the summer that we had the Tribal Youth Theater, and she took my little script that I had written, and she sent it to a competition in Colorado, to Fort Collins, not Fort Collins. It was in Durango, and there is Fort Lewis is the name of it, and it's
Fort
strong.
Lewis College.
It's strongly connected to Native American history. It was at one time a boarding school. Are you aware of that all that has been coming out about boarding schools?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of it is, horrible. And there was one there at in the history of Fort Lewis. I mean, of course, not since it's become a college, but it may be at the beginning it was a fort, but then it was a boarding school for Native American children, and as a result of that and stuff connected with it, which was unfortunate and not pleasant to hear, now any Native American who wants to go to that school can go to it free. This is the school that they had a playwriting festival for Native American playwrights. My daughter entered my name in it. It was a festival of it, so it wasn't necessarily a competition. But my play was chosen. My little Chief Tenderfoot that I'd written for the Tribal Youth Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was chosen as a production to do there. And I was invited to come there, of course, and I was happy to see it. And then afterwards I had to lead a discussion, which I was very anxious about, because I cannot claim, this is my younger daughter's perspective, that we cannot claim to be we cannot claim to speak. We don't feel, I don't want to use a worthy. We are not Native. We don't want to be the chief spoke. We can't. We don't have the heritage. We have Native American blood, but we don't have that full heritage that makes us a spokesperson for Native Americans.
Understood.
With our association and, with my history and with my background that I have, can we talk about my great-grandfather, a Shalatubby, with pride, and from that the other people in my family who also share that blood. It is something that I am proud of, but I have to be careful. I don't, when I speak, and my older daughter has gone through this, and I understand it when people don't look at us and feel that we should necessarily have the right to talk about. So anything that I have said, perhaps when heard by a Native American, they might resent it because I am not a full blood, I'm not half blood, and I haven't had that full experience that they have, in living as that. And so I am proud to have that heritage, and I am also aware that I am looked upon, not embraced totally by that world, that Native American world. And so I hope I haven't said anything that offended anybody, but we are happy that we have a little bit that we can participate in the ways that I've described to you. But that was sweet of her to do that. And
did you know she was doing it?
I didn't, but she did. She finally told me that she did. I don't know what I didn't have any expectations. She entered it too, and hers should have been in it rather than mine. But mine was funny, and it was Chief Tenderfoot, and it was about how the first moccasins came to be. And as I said, it's a Nez Perce legend, and I just put words to the legend. But I wanted to touch upon I feel that my career as a director is the things that I look at, and that I am proud to say that I had, these 3 international productions. Mm-hmm. And I am grateful for the opportunities that were presented to me to be able to have those experiences. And I am also keenly aware always that, you have to, cliches are accurate because they're true. I mean, we hear them over and over again, but to quote one, you sound, shallow or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that those of us who produce anything that anybody looks at and, thinks, well, that's okay, you're doing okay. We don't get there alone, ever. And back and around me, holding me always, are people who have loved me and supported me, embraced me, and recognized me, and given me the energy and the education and the love to do what I love. And I'm so grateful to all of those people. Especially, I mentioned my family, and I haven't, I touched upon my brother. My brother was one of the most wonderful men I've ever known. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was great to be around. And I couldn't, when he became an actor, I just couldn't believe it, but because he did what I couldn't do. He went into the world where, you face rejection more than you face, you're my pick for this. But he went through it, and he became an actor, Burr DeBenning, whose name in the height of his career was singly put up on the screen after he was in a television show as a guest actor. Burr DeBenning, guest direct, or starring Burr DeBenning. And so he had full screen credit, in his career. And as my son-in-law, who is a playwright, married to my daughter, who is a playwright, he stumbled on this thing that I think, have I talked about that he found this thing that was on Turner Classic Movies about my brother?
Yes.
Is that, I've already mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
But having my brother, I there's kind of a fun story. I don't know. We're getting ready to, I think, call the interview over.
Now, I wanted to ask, did you ever cast him in one of your plays? Did he come back and do something with your...
No, he didn't. But when I was directing for Joanne in Temple, Texas, my friend Joanne, and I was directing I Never Sang for My Father, I was very concerned about the man that I cast. I'll just say no more about, I won't mention names or even roles, but I told her, I want to get my brother here. I want my brother to come and do this role now, because I am not able to get that to happen. And she said, I wasn't allowed to do that. She said, you can't do that. This is a community theater. But I wanted to bring him back. But I'll tell you what he did do. In my sorority, when we had, I would write skits. I wrote skits all my life. In my directing also, I do want to go back and say, that I look back up on when I was in the 4th grade and we wrote the play and we had to return the money. That's one of my directing experiences. But my brother, and there was another friend of his in high school, that we were recruiting for membership, and I was a member of my sorority, and so we had a skit that was about it was an island, kind of a Hawaii theme, and so it was a jungle theme, and so my brother and Bob McMurtry played islanders who sang a song, Mingo Bongo Bongo, I don't want to leave the jungle, oh no, and they were darling. That's that. But I saw him when he performed here, of course, and he grew as an actor so so I could see it all along. And I'm amazed by him. He's no longer alive, but he did, as I've said over and over, it's repetitive. I apologize for that. He did what I could not do. He went into that business. And those of you out there who've succeeded at that business, and you know who you are, you know what I'm talking about. One of the OSU graduates told me, who was out there as a producer, told me that she said she just anymore she couldn't be in the casting business because when people come in to audition for her, she said the hope and the anxiety in their eyes to be cast troubled her so much that she just had to not do that anymore. But my brother did it, and as I said, he had a strength that I did not have. And there were, because I was older than he, I was performing I remember, I just can't believe it, when he tried out for Varsity Review to be the MC, he was not picked. And I helped him write his audition monologue. And I can recite you, I won't, but I can recite you a couple of things, that was in it. And he, I couldn't believe it. And but nevertheless, and the person who got the role could say, well, I beat him out and look where he is now. And of course, that's what many people can say about, when they audition, that they do well and somebody goes on to be, have some fame. But
so they had Varsity Review then. I've heard a little bit about Varsity Reviews. Yeah, a little bit. So maybe if he should have wrote his own script, is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe the script that I have would have been better if he had written it himself. But he wrote some of it.
Yeah.
But I used there was an ad on television that I used, and there was something else too. But nevertheless, they're not. I wouldn't say that it was. What's his name? The man. Gosh, I won't stop and pause over that one because I don't want to embarrass myself.
No,
but
okay.
Nevertheless, it was supposed to be funny. And this other guy, I saw the auditions. But if you're watching now and you won that, you were good. But anyway, that's the way it is. That's auditions. They're tough.
Well, how would you prep for one? Did you have a routine that you would normally do before you?
Well, sometimes they're specific, and they tell you that they want you to bring something, and if you're auditioning for a comedy, then you will try to choose something that would be comparable, to the material, so that you can show that you could handle it. And then you do it, and somebody said, that you need to wear something that people will remember you. If you're at a huge cattle call, I'll tell you something I think is funny, and you may not think it as funny as I do, but nevertheless, there was a film that was done here. It was written by an Oklahoma author. I know you know the work, Where the Red Fern Grows. Mm-hmm. I think there are two versions of it, but one of them, the first one I think, was done here, and they had auditions for it at the Tulsa Little Theater. So 3 of us got together, friends, and we went as a unit to audition. You had to you audition separately. I can't remember what they had us to do, but we didn't. I don't think we went in with any material. I think it was with just ourselves. With they would talk to us and see how we would do. The author was an Oklahoman, and it was written about around the Tahlequah area, and it was a wonderful show. Wonderful thing. I read it first. I read it when I was living in New Jersey, and it was in the Saturday Evening Post, and I read it. It was serialized, I believe, and I ran the Saturday Evening Post is no more, but it was when I was living there, before I moved to Toledo and was unrecognizable as a 25-year-old. I was 20 years older, according to this 13-year-old boy. I was living in New Jersey and so homesick for Oklahoma, and I read this book. I read this thing, where the red fern grows. I could hardly get through it. I was so emotional about it. But so it meant something to me, and I've met him. He came to Tulsa, and I got to meet him, and I know that he took book tours as people do who are writers, and it was he was an extraordinary talent because his wife, he'd married an educator, and she helped him with it, but so we auditioned, and it was Gary Busey, it was Gaylord Sartain, and I, the three of us. And these two, Gary and Gaylord, went on to become film stars. And Gaylord, I believe, is living in Tulsa. I think he probably could have still, I don't know if you know who he is. Did you ever see the movie, was it Green Tomatoes or something about green tomatoes? Anyway, he was in that. He was in that movie, and he had a featured role in it. And Gaylord was a very fine actor. He and Gary, Gaylord had a show in Tulsa called
Mazeppa Papazoide.
Mazeppa Papazoide, and it was just a fun thing that came on. It's part of Tulsa history, really. And Gaylord, he was a great talent. So was Gary, and so I'm not. But nevertheless, I was with those two talents, and the three of us auditioned for it. Well, none of us were chosen. But Bob Telford, who was the director of the community theater at that time, his wife got in it. And the auditions were held at the Tulsa Little Theater. Well, I guess in talking about my brother, I've probably said enough, but I was very proud of him. And I was also always delighted to be in his company. You hear about people who light up a room. My brother did. And he didn't have a huge ego at all. I mean, he wasn't. I just come up with the phrase lately. It was after Oklahoma State's latest football game. I said, my favorite dessert is humble pie. I eat a lot of it. You have to be humble, don't you? You have to be able to, in theater and show business, you've got to be able to recover from defeats.
Rejection.
Yes, you have to recover from something that can push you down and make you feel like I don't even want to get out of bed. But as I said, I'm very proud of him, and he did some work that I most recently I saw the work that he did with Sandy Dennis in Sweet November, and that was a movie that he made years and years ago. It's had a second version, but his appearance in it, Sweet November, he was. I won't go about this story, but he was October. I'll just say that, and so his appearance in it comes in toward, not at the middle, but just a little bit before the middle. It is a continuing role once he comes in. And it just came on Turner Classic Movies once, and I just happened, and I turned it on. I do have a copy of it, so I can watch it, at home. But I thought, that is my brother. I mean, he is so strikingly handsome, and his eyes are so blue, and that's a little brother that I fought around the house with, and struggled, and he
got in the bathwater before him.
Maybe if our parents had known, they might have put him in first. I hope people heard you say that. If anybody remembers what I said in the first of it, maybe I didn't even say that on the air, but nevertheless.
Well, maybe the fact that it was in that order made him so successful.
Well,
isn't that
a nice thing for you to say? Well, that's what I'm talking about, the niceness of one of the things. The last line one of the last lines in Streetcar Named Desire is and this all theater people are familiar with this. I've always depended on the kindness of strangers. I've always depended upon the kindness of strangers, of friends, of everybody. And it's through the kindness of people that I know that have treated me so sweetly and kindly. And you among them, Tanya, and I'm grateful for you. Really. It's so nice. You've made this easy.
Do you have any other questions?
Is there something that I
needs to cover?
I don't think so.
Well, my last question is, how do you want people to remember Annawyn?
I don't know how to answer that really. Once I was talking with Joanne, I mentioned her name, and I also mentioned today that she was an associate producer for the Dick Cavett show. Didn't I say that this morning? She had, as they call it, she had props and chops as well. But one time we were discussing with the theater friends how if we had a picture made of ourselves that expressed us, what would we want it to be? And we all had different things to say. And I said that I thought that I would like to be with my family in front of a stage, just my family just arranged in front of the stage. And she said she thought that seemed presumptuous or pompous or something like that. So I thought about that, and but I think that I would want, and I have been, Bob Telford told me once, the theater Tulsa Little Theater director that I've mentioned in connection with Fritz Congdon, he directed me, both of them directed me in shows in Tulsa. He told me once he said, when you get to be a certain age, there are people that look to you, and you can be a mentor. He didn't use that word, but he was saying that you reach a point in your life when that will happen if you're active in any field, that people can look to you. I don't know what to say. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the people who have been in my life and who have shared friendships with me and shared, the theater experience with me. I just want to thank them for being my friends, and I don't want to sound, I don't want this to sound false in any way, or just, I'm not wanting to sound, in any way egotistical or anything, or falsely so. Or, there's a character in, I think it's in David Copperfield, with Uriah Heep, where he's this pitiful character, and he always talks about being humble. He's so humble. And I don't want to sound falsely so at all. But I am grateful for the opportunities and the friendships that I've had. And and I still expect to have them. And I have one with you. I mean, you've and my daughter-in-law who contacts with you, and it's I appreciate having this opportunity to talk with you. And so I thank you for it. That's where I want to be. I want to know, I want to be that kind of person who recognizes it. I wasn't always. Who recognizes, maybe it's you have to be 89 years old, I don't know. But who really can look back and rejoice in those things. And also to be able to know it at the time, I think maybe that's what I would say. I hope that you to remember me, to remember that there were opportunities I had that I didn't express my gratitude for. And I hope that all can recognize those things at the time that they happen, and really know that, and realize something, that you've been given something of value, and that like I can look back on those things and be so enriched, just at the memories of them. And I do. I wish them, one of the things that I'm trying to, and the book is Anna of the King and I, and there's a song in it, it's Hello Young Lovers, and it's sung by the character of Anna, and she says, she said, I had a love like yours one day. I had a love like yours one day. So don't feel sorry for me. And so when I say to people, I will say, I'm finding several things to say, aren't I? And, you enjoy your life, and be aware of your life, and be aware of the good things. And there are lots of things that you'll go through that are not. We all do. It's part of our life. But I want you to know that I share those experiences. I did. And I wish that for others as well, that people have those good experiences and are aware of it, because life is wonderful, and it's a gift. It's a gift to be alive. I feel that, and so I will say, enjoy your life and be aware of the goodness of it.
Well, thank you. I'm aware of the goodness and the gift you've given us. Thank you very much for the time we've spent with you. It's been great.
I have appreciated this, and you. I do so much, and thank you.
I'm looking forward to what comes next. If you're going to direct a play somewhere.
One of the things that I have not mentioned is my Stillwater High School speech teacher, who meant a great deal to me. She chose me to be I was in the English class when I was a freshman, and my English teacher asked me if I was interested, or she knew that I was interested in theater, so she said that there was a play going on, and that the speech teacher was looking for someone to play this role. So that's how I met Mrs. Linthicum, my speech teacher. She directed me in the very first play I did in high school, and directed all of the high school plays that I was in. She also directed my brother in some plays. I think it was Harry Gets the Car Tonight. But Mrs. Linthicum talked to me once at school, and she told me about Girls' State. And I guess I had heard Girls' State mentioned, and it's on the periphery of my mind or my life. But she said, I think, Annawyn, that you would be a good governor of Girls' State. And I thought, really? And I thought, well, maybe, I don't know, but I was not sure that it was something that I could do or wanted to do. But I was chosen as one of the girls to go to Girls State. There were 4 of us. And it's a valuable lesson in history because I'm sure that many people know about it, Girls State and Boys State. I'll point to somebody that maybe people know who went to Boys State. And you can, and that person is the former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. He has talked about his experience as Boys State in New Jersey. He was elected governor after I went to Girls State, and he is a prominent political figure in the country now. And I bet you that there are some other people in government that have had that experience. It is an educational experience to go because all the offices in the state are represented. You start out in a city. So we elect all the officers of the city, a mayor, assistant mayor, commissioners, etc. So you start out with those offices first, and then you go up to the county, but you get up to the state. When we get to the state election, I mean, we're going from one election to another, filling those offices. But we get then to, we had the parties that we split into. And so you are either in the Boomer Party or the Sooner Party. I think that I was a Boomer. But back to the honor of it, it was an impressive thing, and it was an honor to be selected for it. And I did know that, even though I was relatively uninformed about it. And the approach by my speech teacher saying to me that she thought that perhaps I could rise and become a major political figure at Girls State. I was also, surprised by that. But that showed, once again, I referred to people offering me things and showing me things. And that was something she said to me. She had faith in me. She actually wrote in my yearbook that I was her pet. So I guess it's no surprise that she would think highly of me. However, going there she died soon after my senior year, or during my senior year maybe. And that I went to the Girls State in 1951. And as I said, we were divided into parties and starting out in cities. And I don't remember the name of my city, but I was elected mayor of it. And then from there, I was elected head of the party. I'll just say that I was a Boomer, and I was elected. And I had to run for it, of course. I had to put myself out there. And I look back on it now, and I'm surprised, that I had the gumption to do it, or the ego to do it, because, to put yourself out there. That's what it means in chorus line, when you put yourself in that, and you're examined. So I'm there with all of these girls that are chosen from all over Oklahoma to come to it. It was held in Chickasha, and it was at that time a women's college. It no longer is. I believe it's coeducational now. But so we were there. That was where Girls State took place, and as it came time, to put yourself forth as governor, I must have had subconsciously the words of my speech teacher within me, telling me, Annawyn, I think you could be elected governor. And I was. I ran for governor of Girls State, and I was elected. And it was a tremendous time in my life. It was such a thing to win that. And the one who was Girls State governor ahead of me, her name was Marvella Hearn. She was from Enid, and she was a beautiful woman, young lady, girl. She then, from Girls State, became a delegate to Girls Nation. And at that time, they chose the delegates to Girls Nation were the winner of the governor and the one who ran against her were the two delegates to Girls Nation. And she went to Girls Nation as a delegate from Oklahoma, and she became president of Girls Nation. And that is a big deal. And I remember, this is something that I haven't shared earlier, but she participated in speech contests. And I remember one place that we were at, I was kind of unaware of her at that time. That was before I hadn't gone to Girls State when I was seeing her at speech competitions. But I remember what she was using as an entry, and it was in the poetry competition, and she was doing the Mountain Whippoorwill. And it's a strong entry. But one of my friends, Betty Taylor, said that when she saw Marvella Hearn, who at that point was senior in high school, and she was a senior too, Betty, and I was a junior, she said, she's covered with these pins. And so I did see her. And of course she had Girls State and she had Girls Nation, and she looked like a general. And she was wearing them. I don't know if I don't think that I wore my pins around like that, but she was proud of it, and she should have been. And I also remember what she said in talking to us. She said, because she met President Truman at Girls Nation, and she said, and this was her line that everybody remembered, she said, before I met him, she said, I didn't know whether to wear gloves, that I could take that glove and say, President Truman held his glove, or whether I should just shake his hand with my own hand and, feel that. And I've forgotten what she did, but nevertheless, I remember that, and it was a nice story to, a little vignette of her experience there at Girls Nation. But in going to, and she, of course, was in attendance at my Girls State, that I was there representing Stillwater, Oklahoma. I was a Girls State. I was a representative from Stillwater, Oklahoma. I was proud to be there, glad to be there, honored to be there. And I became governor. And truly, I just look on it and I think, how in the world did I do it? I don't know. And I think this is what I think I attribute it to. And it's not anything grand or admirable particularly, but once the governor of Oklahoma at that time, the lieutenant governor, was George Nye. And he was a young man, and he was a good-looking young man. And so I knew what I was doing when I did this. I wasn't thinking of, how connecting it to an office. But when he came into the room, I slid off my chair. And everybody knew knew that this girl over here, when he came into the room, it was kind of like, a swoon. And I'm not touting that as a way to get elected to office, but but nevertheless, at the governor's, I remember when I was speaking, asking to be the nominee for the party, I remember things that I said, and they were heartfelt. And I said, I would love to be the candidate, and I promise you I'll do the best I can. It was serious. But the other thing that, is so strong about it is coming up, I have a thorough knowledge. Probably some of it is a little misty or shadowy because it was so long ago, but to come up and understand the structure of the government in action from the ground up is an experience that has stayed with me. I have always been active in the elections. There's not one election in which I have not voted. And the latest voting I did was just a week ago in Littleton, Colorado. We voted on two propositions or laws that might be changed. And we also voted for the school board. And at this day and time in which I'm speaking, it has been recognized and noted that the school board is one of the most important places that you can elect a person for, the board that has an impact upon education. And so I attribute also my parents were active and, they voted as well as I did, that's having that example. But the Girl State experience took me through the governorship, and the person who I beat was a very, very talented girl, and she was from Purcell, and her name was Janan Walker, and she has since I haven't kept in contact with her at all, but she went on to work in the government in Washington, D.C., and she became an ambassador to a small country, and I don't even remember what name it was, but she must have known. It was during the President President Clinton's tenure, and so I knew that she had to have had an association with him. But I was nominated. The two of us went to Girls Nation. And at Girls Nation, there are only four officers that are chosen. And two of them on one ticket, two of them on the other. And I remember that I think that our ticket was a Federalist, but I'm not sure. But I thought that she was going to be one of the candidates for president or vice president of the party that she was in, because we were split up. But in the party that I was in, I was elected to be the vice president candidate on this ticket. So that in itself was something that I am proud of, even though our ticket did not win, because there are only four of us who were nominated to run. And the girl who won the president, because it's like the Democratic and Republican Party, you take the two of them together, but she was an exchange student from Denmark, and there was no way that anybody could have beat her, because she was very engaging and very charming, and she'd been chosen from when she was an exchange student. She had been chosen to come and to Girls Nation, and I can imagine that experience for her, being somebody from another country and coming here and going through that process, had to have educated her beyond what the experience would be for a normal Denmark young woman. And it was a wonderful experience for me, because we were exposed to so much. I don't need to go into it, but those of the traditional Washington monuments and historical places we were all taken to participate in them. And it does remain to me my Girl State experience, which happened in 1951, and being governor, and going also to Girls Nation and being a delegate from the state of Oklahoma, Stillwater, Oklahoma, my home. I was very proud to be there and be on that losing ticket. And I want to mention that since I was Girl State and I think governor in 1951, there have been two other girls who were in my own age group, approximately, who became governor after I, 2 years after I, and then maybe I'd have to look at, I haven't looked at it, the specific years, but I do believe I was the first girl from Stillwater who was the governor of Girl State. But the next one was Judy Hillier. And she's married now to Wayne Allen, who is a principal. He was president of Conoco, and there are many things on the campus many buildings that have Conoco's name, and also Wayne Allen's personal contributions are many to the Oklahoma State University education program. And the third girl, and who knows, there may be many more after. I certainly would love to know, but the other one is Melinda Berry, whose family was very prominent in Stillwater, and her achievements are incredibly long. It's just amazing what she has done, both Judy and Melinda, in their lives as grown-up women. And so that's a company. It'd be fun to get together with them again. We've never done that. I have been brought back as a governor to make a speech to the auxiliary, and I'm sure that they were too. But I want to thank the American Auxiliary for providing me with this educational and inspiring opportunity.
Anything else? Okay, that's good. Thank you.